The day I brought the antique mirror into my apartment marked the beginning of an inexplicable journey. I remember standing in that peculiar little shop, tucked away in a forgotten alley of the bustling city. It was one of those places you stumble upon by chance and never find again, no matter how hard you try. I was never one for antiquities, but something about this mirror captivated me. It was large, with an ornate frame that spoke of a long-forgotten era, and yet, there was something unsettlingly alive about it. The shopkeeper, a wizened old man with a cryptic smile, insisted it was a rare find. "It has a story," he said, his voice a raspy whisper. I should have asked what story, but I didn't. My life back then was as monotonous as they come. I worked as a software developer, spending my days coding in a cramped office, and my nights in the silent company of my small apartment. I had always been introverted, more at ease with the predictable patterns of my solitary existence. But as I hauled the mirror into my living room, a strange sense of anticipation stirred within me. The first few days were uneventful. The mirror stood against the wall opposite my couch, a silent, imposing presence in my otherwise mundane living room. Then, one evening, as I lounged on the couch, idly glancing at the mirror, I noticed something off. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a fleeting shadow cast by the dim lamp. But as I focused, I realized the person in the mirror, which was supposed to be me, wasn't mirroring my actions. He was moving independently, living out scenes that were not my own. This other me was laughing heartily, surrounded by friends in what seemed like a lively party, a stark contrast to my quiet, solitary evening. My initial reaction was disbelief, followed by a chilling thrill. I stood up, my movements cautious, almost fearful. The man in the mirror did the same, but instead of mimicking me, he strolled out of view, only to reappear with a glass of wine in his hand, still engaged in that unseen celebration. Night after night, I found myself drawn to the mirror. I'd watched this other version of me lead a life so vastly different from my own. He was confident, charismatic, the life of the party. He seemed to have everything I lacked: a successful career, a vibrant social life, a sense of purpose. It became an obsession. I started neglecting my work, ignoring calls from the few friends and family I had. The mirror offered a glimpse into a life I had long yearned for but never dared to pursue. It was mesmerizing, intoxicating. And then, one fateful night, as I sat there envying my other self, he suddenly looked straight into the mirror, straight at me. Our eyes locked, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. He raised a hand, and in a fluid motion, wrote something on a steam-fogged surface on his side of the mirror. "Help me." The words, scrawled in the condensation, sent a cold dread coursing through me. This was no longer a mere curiosity, a strange anomaly to be observed. It was a plea, a bridge between two worlds, and I knew then that I couldn't just sit back and watch any longer. The message helped me lingered in my mind long after it had faded from the mirror's surface. I was consumed by a mix of fear and fascination. Who, or what, was this other version of me? Why did he need help, and how could I possibly assist someone who existed in a reflection? The next few days were spent in a haze of restless thoughts and half-hearted attempts at my usual routine. I couldn't focus on my work, the code on my screen turned into a meaningless jumble. My conversations with colleagues were brief, my mind always drifting back to the mirror. I needed to understand. My first step was to return to the oddities shop where I had purchased the mirror. However, the alley that once housed the peculiar little store was now just an empty space between two buildings. The shop, like a mirage, had vanished without a trace. The shopkeeper, the only link to the mirror's history, was gone. Refusing to be deterred, I started researching online, digging through forums and antique collector sites, seeking anyone who might know something about the mirror. Days turned into nights, and nights into early mornings, as I scoured the internet for answers. Finally, I stumbled upon a thread discussing a mirror with properties similar to mine. It mentioned that the mirror once belonged to a pair of twins in the 19th century, one of whom met a tragic end. The story resonated with me. I couldn't help but draw parallels between the twins and the two versions of myself. One thriving, the other me trapped in a cycle of monotony and loneliness. Was the mirror somehow balancing our lives? One side experiencing joy, the other sorrow. With each passing day, my reflection's life grew more distressing. The once lively parties turned into scenes of him alone, looking despondent and trapped. His world, which had initially seemed so full of life and color, now mirrored my loneliness and despair. Then came another message. This time he wrote, "Switch with me." It was a direct plea, a clear invitation. Could I cross over? Should I? The thought was both terrifying and irresistible. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, an idea took root in my mind. What if I could enter the mirror? What if I could free this other me, this Alexei, from his torment? The following evening, armed with a resolve I never knew I had, I approached the mirror. The surface, which always reflected my room with unerring accuracy, now seemed fluid, almost beckoning. I reached out a tentative hand, expecting to feel cold glass, but instead, my fingers met a surface that yielded like the surface of a still lake. With a deep breath, I pushed forward, and the mirror swallowed me whole. The sensation was disorienting, like plunging into a pool of cold water. I felt a momentary rush of panic, then a sudden release as I emerged on the other side. The world I stepped into was a stark contrast to my own. It was my apartment, but not as I knew it. The walls were adorned with lavish decorations, the furniture was luxurious, and the air was filled with the rich aroma of expensive cologne. And there he was, Alexei, my mere self, standing a few feet away with a look of desperate hope. For a moment, we just stared at each other, two identical beings in a surreal standoff. Then he spoke, his voice a haunting echo of my own. "You came," he said, a mix of relief and something darker in his tone. "You can free me." His words sent a chill down my spine. Free him? How? And what would it cost me? The truth of the mirror and the fate of Alexei were about to unfold, and I feared what I might discover in this twisted reflection of my own existence. In the lavish version of my apartment, I stood face to face with Alexei, my mirror counterpart. The atmosphere was heavy with an unspoken understanding of the bizarre situation we found ourselves in. Alexei's eyes, so much like my own, held a depth of sadness and desperation I had never witnessed before. "Tell me," I urged, "why do you need to be freed? What is this place?" Alexei motioned for me to sit on an ornate sofa, a far cry from my modest furniture. As I took in the opulence around me, he began to recount his tale. "This world," he started, his voice laced with weariness, "is a prison of sorts. A balance to your world. When you live in monotony and solitude, I experience joy and companionship. But when your life takes a turn towards happiness, my world becomes this," he gestured around, "a gilded cage." I listened, a growing sense of horror and fascination intertwining within me. "But how? Why?" I stammered. "The mirror," Alexei continued, "is a conduit between our worlds. It's bound by a curse, one that demands balance. One side must always mirror the other's fortune, but in reverse. My happiness is your sorrow, your success my failure." The revelation was a lot to process. All this time, my loneliness, my lack of ambition, was it all because of this cursed mirror? Was my misery the price for Alexei's affluent but hollow existence? "Why ask me to switch?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. Alexei's eyes dropped. "I thought if we switched, I could finally experience a genuine, unburdened life. But now that you're here, I realize it's not that simple. The curse would just reverse our roles." There was a long silence as we both grappled with the reality of our situation. I thought about my life, the dullness of my days, wondering if this was my chance to change it all. Suddenly, Alexei's demeanor shifted. His eyes hardened, and a cold smile crept onto his face. "But maybe there's another way," he said, standing up. "Maybe one of us doesn't have to go back." Before I could react, Alexei lunged at me. We grappled, crashing into the lavish furniture. It was surreal, fighting a mirror image of myself, but I knew that this was a fight for more than just survival. It was a fight for freedom, for a life unbound by the mirror's curse. As we struggled, the room around us began to warp and distort, as if the mirror's magic was unraveling. Objects flickered in and out of existence, and the walls seemed to breathe. Amidst the chaos, I saw my chance. With a surge of adrenaline, I pushed Alexei back and made a dash for the mirror. It shimmered in the turmoil, the gateway back to my world. I dove into its surface, feeling the cold, liquid-like sensation envelop me once more. I tumbled out onto the floor of my own apartment, gasping for breath. The mirror, once a portal to an alternate life, now showed only my reflection. But it was different this time. My reflection was no longer a prisoner of circumstance. It was just me, Alex, free from the curse of the other side. I stood up, heart still pounding from the encounter. As I looked around my modest apartment, a sense of peace settled over me. My life might be ordinary, but it was mine to shape, free from the twisted balance of the mirror. But even as I reveled in my newfound freedom, a nagging thought lingered in the back of my mind. What had become of Alexei? Was he still out there, trapped in the mirror's world? Or had the shattering of the curse freed him too? I approached the mirror cautiously, half expecting to see Alexei's desperate face looking back at me. But there was nothing, just my own reflection, staring back with a mix of relief and uncertainty. I decided to keep the mirror, a reminder of the bizarre journey and the freedom I had fought for. But sometimes, late at night, I couldn't help but wonder if the story was truly over. Was Alexei still out there, a reflection waiting for another chance to break free? Or had the mirror's magic finally released us both from its grasp? The answer remained unclear, shrouded in the mystery of the mirror. But one thing was certain: the other side of the mirror held secrets that were best left undiscovered. In the days following my surreal encounter with Alexei, my life resumed its usual rhythm, but with a newfound appreciation for its simplicity and freedom. The mirror now hung silently on my wall, a benign reflection of my mundane reality. Yet, the experience had left an indelible mark on me, a constant reminder of the fragile line between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Despite my attempts to return to normalcy, there were moments when I caught myself staring into the mirror, half expecting to see a flicker of the life I had briefly glimpsed. But the reflection remained steadfastly my own, the other side now just a memory. I began to ponder the nature of our existence. Was Alexei merely a creation of the mirror, a reflection of my deepest desires and fears? Or had I truly connected with another soul, trapped in a parallel world? The questions lingered, unanswered, like shadows at the edge of my thoughts. One evening, as I sat in my living room, the memories of the mirror world flooded back with an unexpected intensity. The opulent surroundings, the sense of entrapment, and the desperation in Alexei's eyes haunted me. I realized then that the experience had changed me in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. I was no longer the person who had first gazed into the antique mirror, captivated by its mystery. In the following weeks, subtle changes began to manifest in my life. I found myself taking risks, reaching out to people, pursuing interests that I had long suppressed. It was as if the encounter with Alexei had awakened a part of me that yearned for more than just the safety of routine. My colleagues noticed the change. "You seem different, Alex," they say, a hint of curiosity in their voices. I would just smile, unsure of how to explain the transformation that had taken root within me. Then, one unremarkable Thursday, something peculiar happened. As I passed by the mirror on my way to work, I paused, a feeling of unease creeping over me. My reflection seemed normal, but there was a subtle distortion, a ripple in the corner of the mirror that hadn't been there before. I leaned in closer, my heart racing with a mix of fear and anticipation. The ripple expanded, revealing a scene that made my breath catch in my throat. It was a room, not unlike my own, but within it was a figure, hunched over a desk, their features obscured. The figure slowly raised their head, and I found myself staring into the eyes of someone familiar, yet unmistakably different. It wasn't Alexei, but another reflection of myself, one that wore an expression of deep sorrow and exhaustion. The mirror was no longer a mere reflection, it had become a window into countless possibilities, each a different version of my life. The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. The mirror held not just one alternate reality, but an infinite number of them. I stepped back, my mind reeling from the implications. The mirror was not just a cursed object, it was a nexus of potential lives, each path diverging from decisions made or not made. As the days passed, the mirror continued to reveal glimpses of these alternate realities. Some were mundane, others filled with adventurous sorrow. But no matter how tempting or horrifying the reflections, I resisted the urge to step through the mirror again. I had learned my lesson: some doors, once opened, can lead to places from which return is not guaranteed. The mirror, with its endless possibilities, became a symbol of the choices we make and the paths we take. It was a reminder that our lives are shaped not just by circumstances, but by our actions and decisions. And so, I lived my life with a newfound purpose, embracing the challenges and opportunities that came my way. The mirror remained on my wall, a silent guardian of secrets, and a testament to the journey I had undertaken. But its magic, its ability to transport me to other worlds, remained untapped, a door I chose not to reopen. For in the end, the most important reflection was not the one in the mirror, but the life I chose to live, a life of my own making, free from the shadows of what could have been. Time passed, and the mirror's presence in my apartment became a normal part of my life. Each day, I'd glance at it, sometimes catching a glimpse of another life, a different version. However, the mirror had one more secret to reveal. It was a stormy night, the kind where the wind howls like a chorus of wailing spears, and the rain beats against the windows with relentless fury. I was working late on a project, the glow of my computer screen casting eerie shadows across the room. The mirror was there, as always, a silent observer. As midnight approached, a particularly violent gust of wind rattled the windows, and the power flickered, plunging the room into darkness. In that brief moment of shadow, I saw something in the mirror. It wasn't a reflection of another life or a different version of myself. It was something else, something sinister. When the lights came back on, I turned to the mirror, my heart pounding. There, in the glass, was a figure, cloaked in darkness, its features obscured. But its eyes, oh those eyes, they burned with a malevolent intensity, staring right into my soul. I stood frozen, transfixed by the figure. It raised a hand, pointing a finger at me, and in that instant, I felt a chill that went beyond the cold of the storm. It was as if the figure was reaching out from the mirror, piercing the veil between our worlds. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the figure vanished, leaving me alone in the dimly lit room. I approached the mirror cautiously, half expecting the figure to reappear. But there was only my own reflection, looking back at me with wide, fearful eyes. The next day, I was determined to uncover the truth behind the mirror's final secret. I revisited the alley where I had originally found the oddities shop, hoping to find some clue, some explanation for the haunting figure. But the alley was just as empty as before, a dead end in my search for answers. I couldn't shake the image of the dark figure from my mind. It wasn't like the other reflections I had seen in the mirror. This was something different, something darker. I began to wonder if the mirror was more than just a portal to other lives. Perhaps it was a gateway to something far more ancient and malevolent. My research took me down a rabbit hole of folklore and myth, tales of mirrors being used as tools for scrying, portals to other dimensions, and even conduits for dark entities. The more I read, the more I realized that the mirror in my apartment was not just a cursed object, but a relic of power, steeped in mystery and danger. One evening, as I sat pondering my next move, I heard a faint whisper, like a sigh carried on the wind. It was coming from the mirror. I approached it cautiously, and as I did, the surface of the mirror rippled, and the dark figure appeared again. This time, its voice was clear, a sinister whisper that filled the room. "Free me," it said, its eyes burning with an unholy light. I stepped back, a sense of dread washing over me. I knew then that I had to destroy the mirror. It was no longer a curious artifact, but a prison for something ancient and evil. I grabbed a hammer and, with a cry of determination, I struck the mirror. The glass shattered, sending shards flying across the room. The figure in the mirror let out a scream, a sound so filled with rage and despair that it shook the very walls of my apartment. And then, silence. The mirror was destroyed, its fragments scattered across the floor. The dark figure was gone, released or banished, I couldn't tell. But one thing was clear: the mirror's reign over my life was over. I cleaned up the shattered glass, each piece a reminder of the journey I had taken. The mirror was gone, but its lessons remained. I had faced my fears, confronted the unknown, and in doing so, I had found a strength I never knew I had. My life continued, free from the influence of the mirror. I threw myself into my work, my relationships, and my passions. The experience had changed me, made me appreciate the life I had, and the endless possibilities that lay ahead. But sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I would think back to the mirror and the dark figure within. It was a reminder that there are mysteries in this world that are best left unexplored, secrets that should remain hidden in the shadows. The shattered remains of the mirror were gone, but its influence lingered in the corners of my apartment and in the depths of my mind. I had hoped that destroying the mirror would bring an end to the strange journey I had been on, but instead, it left me with more questions than answers. What was the true nature of the mirror? Had I really seen a glimpse of other lives, other possibilities, or was it all an illusion? In the weeks that followed, my life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. I immersed myself in my work, finding solace in the familiar routine of coding and problem solving. My colleagues noticed a change in me, a newfound confidence and assertiveness. I had faced my fears, and it had transformed me. But the experience with the mirror had also ignited a curiosity within me, a desire to understand the mysteries of the world that lay just beyond our perception. I began to read more, delving into topics I had previously dismissed as mere fantasy: parallel universes, alternate dimensions, the power of the mind. As I explored these subjects, I found a community of like-minded individuals, people who had experienced their own inexplicable events, their own encounters with the unknown. We shared our stories, our theories, and our doubts. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone in my quest for answers. One evening, as I sat in a cafe discussing the nature of reality with a new acquaintance, I realized how much I had changed. The shy, introverted man who had purchased the mirror on a whim was gone. In his place was someone more open, more engaged with the world around him. I began to understand that the mirror, with all its mysteries and terrors, had been a catalyst for my growth. It had forced me out of my comfort zone, challenged my perceptions of reality, and shown me the potential within myself. But the story of the mirror wasn't quite finished. One day, as I walked through a flea market, a glint of light caught my eye. It was a mirror, not unlike the one I had destroyed, with a similarly ornate frame. My heart skipped a beat as I approached it. I peered into the glass, half expecting to see another world, another version of myself. But there was only my reflection, staring back at me with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The seller, an elderly woman with a knowing smile, noticed my interest. "It's a special mirror," she said, her voice a soft murmur. "It shows not just your reflection, but your potential." I didn't purchase the mirror. I didn't need to. I had already seen my potential, faced my other selves, and emerged stronger for it. The mirror was a reminder of a journey taken, a chapter in my life that had closed. As I walked away, leaving the mirror behind, I felt a sense of peace. The mysteries of the mirror would remain unsolved, its secrets untold. But I had my own life to live, my own path to follow. The experience with the mirror had been a journey into the unknown, a descent into the depths of my own psyche. It had shown me the fragility of reality, the thin veil that separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. But more than that, it had shown me myself, not just a reflection in the glass, but the person I could become. It had been a journey of self-discovery, a confrontation with the darkest and brightest parts of my soul. And so, I moved forward, carrying with me the lessons of the mirror. It had been a strange and terrifying journey, but it had led me to a place of understanding and acceptance. The mirror was gone, but its echoes would resonate within me forever, a reminder of the other side of the glass.